September 2, 1974. David Barksdale, 27 years old, dead. He leaves behind a wife, 3 children. The oldest is 4 years old. The twins aren't even 2 yet. And one of the most powerful street organizations Chicago had ever seen. An empire. No will, no named heir. Just a crown sitting on a table waiting. 1989. Jerome Freeman, the man who stepped into that vacuum, the man they called King Shorty, the man who wore Barksdale's crown for 15 years and turned it into something even Barksdale might not have recognized, is sentenced to 28 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. The empire doesn't stop. It gets bigger. May 2004, Marvel Thompson, the man who held the streets while Freeman sat in a cell, is arrested by the FBI alongside 46 of his people. Agents seize $320,000 in cash, 11 guns, bulletproof vests, and across the operation, a bootleg FM radio station. I'm not joking. We'll get to that. The empire doesn't stop. It gets bigger. February 6th, 2019. Lawrence Loggins, the man they called Big Law, the sitting head of the Black Disciples, is shot to death in a parked car near 72nd and Union. Englewood, same neighborhood, always Englewood. According to an FBI affidavit, he was killed over a missing cocaine and gun shipment from Mexico's Gulf cartel. The debt owed nearly $500,000. Nobody was arrested, not one person, not ever. 4 kings, 45 years. None of them walked away clean. But the thing they built, the thing they bled for, the thing they went to prison for, and the thing they handed from one man to the next like a loaded gun with no safety, it never died. This is the story of the throne and every man who sat on it without ever understanding what they were sitting on. To understand Jerome Freeman, you have to understand the man he could never be. David Barksdale was born May 24th, 1947, on Chicago's South Side, Hyde Park, Englewood, the kind of neighborhoods the rest of the city talked about the way people talk about bad weather, as something distant, something happening to someone else. He was 11 years old when his crew first took shape. By 1961, he had taken sole control of it. By the mid-60s, he had absorbed enough smaller gangs across Englewood and Woodlawn that his organization had its own headquarters, 444 West 63rd Street, corner of 63rd and Normal. That building doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down before the 80s were over. That's how Chicago handles its history. It buries the evidence and puts up condos. In 1969, Barksdale merged his operation with Larry Hoover's Supreme Gangsters to create the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. Barksdale was king, Hoover was chairman. 2 of the most dangerous men on the South Side, same table, same flag. For a moment, it looked like they had figured something out. That moment did not last. June 7th, 1970, Barksdale and Hoover are standing outside a bar at 848 West 69th Street. Englewood, again, always Englewood. Members of a rival organization, the Black Pea Stone Rangers, pull up and open fire, not with handguns, with M14 rifles, military grade, the kind of weapon that doesn't leave anyone wondering whether the shooter meant it. Barksdale is hit multiple times. Hoover gets him into a car and drives him to St. Bernard's Hospital. That drive, that decision, in that moment, is the only reason Barksdale survives the night. Hoover is credited with saving his life, but saving his life is not the same as saving his body. The bullets destroyed his kidneys, not damaged, destroyed. From that night forward, David Barksdale was a dying man. He just didn't know how long the dying would take. The answer was 4 years. September 2, 1974. Kidney failure. 27 years old. Man, 27. I just sit with that. Most people at 27 still trying to figure out who they are, what city feels like home, whether they need to get their life together and go back to school. Barksdale, by 27, had already built an empire, survived getting lit up with military-grade firepower, and spent 4 years feeling his body shut down piece by piece. His funeral was held at Golden Gate Funeral Home, 2036 West 79th Street. He was buried at Restvale Cemetery in Alsip, Illinois. He left behind his wife, Yvonne, his son, David Jr., 4 years old, and twins, Melinda and Ronald, 17 months. He did not leave behind a named successor. That was the first mistake, and someone else was about to make it his opportunity. Jerome Freeman stood just over 5 feet tall, not much more than that. In any other context, any other city, any other zip code, a man that size might spend his whole life being underestimated, overlooked, the guy people talk over at meetings, the guy who has to repeat himself at a bar just to be heard. Freeman solved this problem with platform shoes, with a Rolex, with gold chains thick enough to make a statement without saying a word, with late model Cadillacs and a blue jogging suit that said, "Without apology, I know exactly who I am. Do you?" He was 22 years old when they crowned him King of the Black Disciples. 22. All right, let that land for a minute. 22, just 22. Most of us at 22, we stressing about rent, chasing some girl that may or may not text back, trying to act like we got life figured out. The Jerome Freeman at 22 was stepping into one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. Whole different kind of pressure. The crown fit, though. That's what strikes me. Nobody publicly questioned it. Nobody on record challenged it. Freeman had been in Barksdale's orbit since the 60s. He knew the structure. He knew the streets. He knew what the job required. What the job required, it turned out, was a very specific kind of genius. Freeman built the Black Disciples drug operation into something systematic. 50 kilograms of cocaine a month moving through the South Side and into the South suburbs. That number comes from the National Gang Crime Research Center, and it deserves a moment. 50 kilograms, not total, per month. That is not a corner operation. That is a supply chain. While he received most of it on consignment, suppliers extended him credit because he was, and this is how it was documented, quote, always good for it. Chicago police attributed homicide after homicide to his organization and suspected Freeman of ordering the ones that stuck. Dozens of cases, not one conviction against him personally, not one. 1977, arrested for armed robbery, did 5 years, came back. 1985, police raided his home at 114 and Vincennes, found a sawed-off shotgun. Federal weapons charges followed. He was acquitted. Why was he acquitted? Nobody on record has ever explained it. The case simply went away. One state conviction, 5 years served, one federal acquittal, full stop. There's a version of Jerome Freeman that law enforcement wanted to build. The untouchable kingpin, the ghost who ordered murders and left no fingerprints. The evidence supports that portrait. But underneath it sits another fact, one that's harder to dismiss. Every time the system tried to hold him, he walked. Not through violence, through the system's own rules. The platform shoes, the Rolex, the Cadillac, those were the costume. 1989, Jerome Freeman is 37 years old. He has been running the Black Disciples for 15 years. He has built something that moves more product than most legitimate businesses move inventory. He has been arrested twice and walked twice. The third time, he does not walk. Federal drug trafficking charges. 28 years. He enters federal prison in 1990. And then here's where most stories like this are supposed to end. The king goes down, the organization collapses, the streets redistribute, the news cycle moves on. That is not what happened. Inside maximum security prison, Jerome Freeman did not become a prisoner. He was followed by bodyguards, other inmates, men who answered to him in there the same way men answered to him out there. When he walked into the prison chapel, and he used the chapel not for prayer, but for meetings, 2 men positioned themselves on either side of him. Nobody asked why. Nobody sitting in that chapel on those days was confused about the arrangement. From inside those walls, the orders kept moving. The operation kept running. And it did not just run, it grew. The operation that had built his reputation on the outside became the floor, not the ceiling, for what came next. See, that's the part I keep coming back to. The government spent years building that case, all to stop what Freeman had built, and they got him. They got the conviction. They got the 28 years. But the thing itself, it kept moving, didn't slow down, didn't blink. That tells you something about the system. I can't even fully name it, but it tells you something. Meanwhile, on the streets, a man named Marvel Thompson had stepped into the space Freeman left behind. Thompson was everything Freeman was not in terms of public profile, more visible, more ambitious, and far less interested in the quiet surgical restraint that had kept Freeman out of a cell for 15 years. Where Freeman had moved 50 kilograms a month on consignment with the discipline of a man who understood that invisibility was protection, where Thompson began scaling in ways that would have seemed reckless to the man he replaced. And there was something else happening in 1989, something that gets buried underneath Freeman's conviction in the timeline. The Black Disciples and the Gangster Disciples, the two factions awkwardly sharing the banner of the Black Gangster Disciple Nation since Barksdale and Hoover merged in '69, formally split. 20 years of uneasy alliance, gone. Whether Freeman's removal accelerated that fracture, whether his absence was the last thing holding those two forces in the same room, is something historians and law enforcement have never fully settled. What is not disputed is the timing. Freeman went to prison, the nation split, and in the vacuum of both events happening at once, Marvel Thompson began building something new. Freeman sat in his cell. Somewhere out there, the machine kept running without him. Marvel Thompson was not subtle. That is the first thing you need to understand about the man who inherited Jerome Freeman's streets. Freeman had built his empire on restraint, on staying invisible, on moving 50 kilograms a month without leaving fingerprints, on walking out of a federal courtroom when the government was certain he would not. Freeman was a ghost who wore a Rolex. Thompson was something else entirely. In the 1990s, while Freeman held meetings in a prison chapel with bodyguards on either side, Thompson was transforming the Black Disciples into something that looked less like a street gang and more like a corporation. Not a metaphor, an actual corporation. Maybe by the time federal investigators finished piecing together what he had built, prosecutors put the number on record, between $200,000 and $300,000 per day. Per day. Think about what $200,000 a day looks like across 15 years. Think about where it has to go, what businesses you have to construct, what paper you have to generate, what legitimate world you have to build around an illegitimate one just to make it plausible. Thompson built that world. He laundered money through apartment buildings, through a car wash, through a nightclub in Atlanta, and through a rap label, MOB Records Incorporated, based on the South Side, producing acts out of Englewood. And in the year 2000, MOB Records helped a Chicago artist named DJ Casper release a single. You know this song. I guarantee you know this song. It has been played at every school dance, every company holiday party, every wedding reception with an open bar and a DJ who reads the room. The electric slide for people who wanted more instructions. The cha-cha slide. Marvel Thompson, the sitting king of one of the most dangerous street gangs in American history, is listed as a co-writer of the cha-cha slide. The man whose operation moved that kind of money every single day with his name on a song your aunt does at Thanksgiving with her arms out. I've had that fact in my head for a long time, and I still don't fully know what to make of it. But that was Freeman's throne once it passed to somebody else. a cocaine empire cleaning his money through a song your cousin asked the DJ to play at open bars. By 2003, that's the Black Disciples had restructured into a three-king leadership model. Thompson headed the Southside operation. The organization had never been larger, and the FBI had been embedded inside it for 6 years. May 2004, Thompson and 46 members of his organization are arrested in a coordinated federal takedown. Agents seize $320,000 in cash, 11 guns, bulletproof vests, and as promised, a bootleg FM radio station they had apparently been running on the side, because apparently running the most profitable drug operation in the city left enough hours in the day to also run unlicensed radio. Ambition is ambition. Thompson pleaded guilty to federal drug conspiracy charges covering the full scope of what he had built. In April 2007, he was sentenced to 540 months in federal prison, 45 years. DJ Casper later sued him for copyright infringement on the Cha-Cha Slide. The king was gone. The song played on. March 2005, Jerome Freeman walks out of federal prison. He is 53 years old. No limousines, no fur coat, no ATF agents in the parking lot before dawn writing down who showed up. Just a man in his early 50s stepping out into a city that had spent 15 years learning to function without him. Here's the thing about building something that doesn't need you. When you come back to it, it still doesn't need you. Freeman had told federal authorities as early as 2001, while still incarcerated, that he was out, retired, done. And in the years following his release, the evidence suggested he meant at least part of it. He connected with Ceasefire Illinois, the violence intervention program that placed former gang members on corners before the shooting started. He helped organize gang summits in Englewood promoting peace. He participated in more than 30 conflict resolution interventions across the South Side. T.O. Hardiman, the executive director of Ceasefire Illinois, said this about Freeman, and I want to use his exact words because they're worth sitting with. He told me he had an awakening in prison. An awakening, whether he meant it fully, partly, or not at all, nobody ever got a clean answer out of Jerome Freeman. He was not that kind of man. Chicago police were not convinced. They kept watching. Nobody on record ever said he had truly walked away. What he gave instead was 7 years of quieter living, Englewood summits, intervention work, a man trying to find a version of himself the streets hadn't already used up. January 6th, 2012, Jerome Freeman dies of natural causes at Ingalls Hospital in Harvey, Illinois. He is 60 years old. The news is reported 5 days later. No press release, no statement, no ceremony that anyone records. He was born in November of 1951. He died in the first week of 2012. Between those two dates, an empire, a prison sentence, a crown that never quite left his head even when he tried to take it off. 60 years old, natural causes. Of all the men in this story, he is the only one. Jerome Freeman died in January of 2012. And Marvel Thompson was already 5 years into a 45-year federal sentence. And the Black Disciples, the organization Barksdale built, Freeman inherited, and Thompson inflated to $250,000 a day, had fractured into something unrecognizable. No single king, no unified command, just autonomous factions operating independently across the South Side, each one moving product, each one answering to no one above them. The crown was available, and the street always finds a way. Lawrence Loggins stepped into that space quietly. Big Law, released from prison in 2009 after an earlier sentence, he did something almost nobody in this story managed to do. He kept his head down. No arrests for nearly a decade. Then he even worked with Ceasefire for a time. the same violence intervention program Freeman had turned to after his own release. If you looked at Loggins' public record alone, you might have mistaken him for a man who had figured something out. He had not figured something out. He had just gotten better at not leaving a trail. By the mid-2010s, Loggins was the recognized head of what remained of the Black Disciples. But the organization he was running was not what Freeman had built, not what Thompson had built. It was smaller, more fragmented, and reaching further for supply than either of its predecessors ever had, all the way to Mexico. February 6, 2019, Lawrence Loggins is shot to death in a parked car near 72nd and Union in Englewood. He is 46 years old. Police sources said that on the day he was killed, he had held a meeting with subordinates, that he had come down hard on younger members for the way they were running things, that someone in that room or someone connected to it made a decision before the day was done. What the FBI learned afterward was something else. According to an affidavit filed in federal court, a shipment of cocaine and guns had arrived in Chicago from Mexico's Gulf cartel. Some of that shipment went missing, unaccounted for, in the language of Kenneth Brown, Loggins' own right-hand man, speaking to an FBI informant. Brown told that informant that Loggins was killed over the missing shipment, that the debt owed to the cartel came out to nearly $500,000. The FBI paid their informant more than $40,000 for that information. And nobody was arrested for Loggins' murder, not then, not as of this recording. The Black Disciples, the organization that started in Hyde Park in 1958 with teenagers who had nothing, that grew under Barksdale into something fearsome, that Freeman turned into a cocaine machine, that Thompson scaled to $300,000 a day, ended up owing money to a Mexican drug cartel, and when they couldn't pay, the cartel collected. That is what 60 years of this looks like from the inside. 4 kings, 45 years. Here's what they left behind. David Barksdale, a name that became mythology, a crown that outlasted his body by nearly half a century. 3 children who were too young to remember his face. Jerome Freeman, an empire that outgrew him, that ran without him, and that didn't slow down when he went to prison and didn't come back to him when he got out. He died at 60 in a hospital bed in Harvey, Illinois. No press release, the longest reigning king in this chain, and the quietest exit. Marvel Thompson, 45 years in federal prison and a co-writing credit on the Cha-Cha Slide. His sentence was later reduced under the First Step Act. The song is still being played at weddings as you watch this. Lawrence Loggins, a parked car near 72nd and Union, a debt to a cartel, no arrest, ever. None of them really chose the crown. It was already in the room when they walked in. Barksdale built it and died in it. Freeman stepped into the space it left. Thompson held it while Freeman sat in a cell. Loggins was handed a fragment of something that used to be whole. Each of them discovered, too late, that there was no exit door. Freeman is the only one who made it to 60, who died of natural causes, who spent his last years standing on street corners trying to talk people out of exactly what he built. I still don't know if that makes him the winner of this story, or just the last man left on his feet. Barksdale, Freeman, Thompson, Loggins, and somewhere on the south side tonight, somebody already knows how this goes. Somebody already made up his mind to walk into that room and pick up what's waiting on the table. The crown is still there. It is always still there.